Hi, everyone. Good afternoon, actually, good evening to everyone. We'll just have the slides come up in a minute. Until we do that, I'll just very quickly introduce ourselves. I'm Pumi Simanasekara. I'm a partner at KPMG and I'm in charge of KPMG Impact, which is essentially our role as being better corporates, and in our case a better KPMG. So KPMG Impact, to give you an introduction to it, is we as a global firm have committed to being catalysts in this whole net zero journey, and I am the champion here for Sri Lanka, and we're a very closely knit global network. With me, I have Shazad and Kalisha, who is a senior manager and assistant manager, who are also part of KPMG Impact, Kalisha being part of our Future Leaders KPMG Impact Forum as well. Ideally, it would have been great to get to know all of you who are participating. In an ideal world, we would have been sitting in a classroom, getting to know each other and doing this as part of a workshop. Unfortunately, COVID and the world has had other plans, but let's make the most of it. I'd like all of you to be as active as possible, because this is not just another webinar. It's a learning experience. We've put down slides, but we'd like to hear from you as well. If you feel like unmuting and asking us a question, feel free to do so. Put up your hand or put it in the chat box, right? I want all of you to be comfortable enough to utilize the time that we're spending here with you to learn more about ESG, more about how you can measure, monitor, and improve in each of your corporates. Shazad and Kalisha, if you could just switch on your videos so that everyone can get to know who you are. Great, that's fine. Right. So I'm going to start by actually asking you a question so that we can get to know the audience a little bit better, and that way we can focus what we're sharing with you a little better as well. So how many of you have heard about ESG? Rochelle's going to put up the polls and you could use the polls. If you wish to speak up, we're more than happy to hear your views as well. And then the second question is, okay, so let's start with the first question. The poll's up. Have you heard about ESG? Let's be, it's good to, yes, but not sure what it is. Okay, great. So we have a mixed audience, and it's good to know that everybody understands it. That's great. Need to excuse me. I have a bit of a cough. Right. Shall we look at the second question? What is ESG to you? Can we have the second question up? Is the poll up? Yeah, great. Okay. So again, it's a mixed audience. Right, that's great. Okay, so we can move on. Let me just take you through the structure of today's program. We're going to focus, since we've been told by SLASCOM that there's a mixed audience. There'll be beginners in this journey, and then there'll be more advanced, or those corporates who are more in this journey, who've begun this journey. We've structured it in a way that we'll speak to the beginners first, and then we'll move on to the more improving points. That way we can cater to both parties, so bear with us. But in between, when you do have questions, please raise your hand and ask. If not, we'll have questions in the end, but ideally would like to create a conversation. So if we didn't already know this, see, if you've been involved in risk management in your organizations, you'll know that every year you assess what risks we're going to face. And as of lately, you can see by 2020, 2021, climate risk and extreme weather has become one of the top risks in terms of likelihood. And of course, we've got infectious disease, which has been the biggest impact in the last 2 years as well. And we've had biodiversity losses and natural resource crisis really coming to the top of our risk factors. So these are things that are real and we're facing right now. Excuse me. So because of that, a lot of movement has been happening in the rest of the world. Different stakeholders, from regulators to companies to investors, they're all talking about it. COP26, I think, if you were part of it, if you followed up, there's been a lot of conversation, not enough commitment, but there is still movement. So something for us to understand is there's a lot of regulatory pressures, especially in the UK. There's mandated reporting. There's a lot of net zero focus in terms of divesting investments away from industries like coal, investing into companies that are more ESG friendly. So even investors who have large funds disseminating, like BlackRock, who we work with, they're focusing more on entities and investments that are more ESG friendly. So if you haven't even thought about it, they're not even reappointing those boards. So Exxon was one of them who suffered that impact, I would say. And of course, it's not just the UK and the EU. We've seen things in Canada where there's government action, and you've got a lot of civil action. I think if we are in the younger generation, we are to suffer the impact going forward, especially from Gen Z onwards. There's a lot more movement. People are refusing to join companies that are more socially responsible. And I think that's the way it should be. Consumers don't want to purchase goods that are not more sustainable or climate friendly. So this is how it is. So in Sri Lanka as well, we've had a roadmap that came up in 2019. We've committed for a 2030 target. We've had small initiatives that have come across, like plastic waste. I know there was organic fertilizer, which I guess would come back. So these are things that are happening, and it's always it's not something that we can avoid going forward. So in the tech industry as well, the reason we're speaking to you is because SLASCOM is also looking at ESG as part of the industry's movement. So this is something to keep in mind. This is just a little cartoon to sum this up, because we thought COVID is the biggest hit, but we're waiting, yes, obviously for recession, but I think climate change and biodiversity collapse is going to be bigger. So it's not something we can ignore. And just to feel good, we thought, I saw in the poll, there was a component of people who thought it's just a feel good. But just to share with you, our survey globally with CEOs showcased that 57% of leaders in tech thought that believed actually managing climate related risks will be a key factor in keeping their jobs. So that's something that you need to think about on the why. So very quickly, let me just move on and let's really get to how we can start implementing. Another couple of facts just for you to keep in mind. If you're speaking about this in your organizations, take this message back. There is a huge opportunity, like early bird gets the worm, to put yourselves up and put your hand up and say, hey, we're more ESG focused, because there's a lot of investments that are being channeled towards this. So, and it's not going to stop. It'll probably grow, but the rate at which it's growing is a different thing. And there's perception that ESG companies are outperforming non-ESG counterparts. It's actually set, especially this is in Indian statistics that you can look at MSCI India. It's shown. So this is from the perspective of performance. So it's proven that they are outperforming, and it's a longer term game. We'll speak about the longer term game today as well. Right. So for those who need an introduction to ESG, we thought it's very quickly we'll touch on this. Environment risk, other than for flooding to the tsunami to weather changes that's impacting us everywhere, is really other physical risks as well, which could be due to this, the supply chain collapse. I mean, if you are an import-driven business and you're seeing that climate change is impacting us, either through a pandemic or through drought, the sea level rises, all of these are physical risks that are going to impact us and give our companies losses because of physical impact. But then there's the transition risk. Now, see, we had organic fertilizer, which came through overnight. This requirement came overnight. I mean, this is somewhat on a lighter note. Now, if this were to really happen to us in other aspects as well, transitioning is a hugely costly affair because we're suffering interim losses, which we as a country are suffering right now. But yes, we could have phased it out. That's a whole different conversation. But going forward, these things could just become mandated because we are running out of natural resources, or the world will suddenly decide that, no, we're banning or we don't want to trade with certain entities who are not sustainable. So these are things that entities need to think about in terms of the environment. Of course, there's social risk. There's a compliance angle to it. But there's also our responsibility. And if we are not addressing these social risks, we would be at a point where people, because we are in the business of people, especially in tech, will not be willing to work with us, and therefore our customers will not. Similarly, we've got the governance risk, which is compliances with tax laws, having the right corporate governance practices, having the right data protection, having the right compensation, ensuring that coupled with social, diversity-related compensation, all of that would come into play. So we might think we have governance in place, but there might be aspects that we need to rethink as an organization. Now, for the tech industry, this is not a comprehensive list, but this is just to open your minds. Some of the material topics that are being discussed globally and that could be impacting your businesses as well is, of course, for E, climate change, which is your energy and carbon footprint. We've got green tech. There's a lot of innovation happening, so there's opportunity there as well. Then you've got water and waste management. From a social perspective, I think everything's important at this point because human capital is what you're running on. But certain things you might need to think about are skill development, well-being, as well as diversity. I mean, diversity is a hot topic right now. And then the G that I spoke about earlier, which is common to all entities. It's not just for tech, but everybody as a blanket G is going to be applicable. Kalish?
Yeah. So as Pimi explained, with all the trends that are upcoming, we have a lot of institutions and organizations that are developing standards to help clear out and provide clarity over how to report and to give information to all the stakeholders who really need that information. So GRI and SASB and the World Economic Forum have frameworks and standards that cover all ESG related topics, while Carbon Disclosure Project and TCFD look at certain selected ESG topics such as climate risk. And the IR framework looks at things at your governance aspect and ideas bigger than wider than the ESG topics. Overall, they all contribute to the Sustainable Development Goals to help achieve UN's goals. We also have harmonization of all these multiple standards to make it easier for investors to understand and to compare standards between organizations. The IFRS has developed a International Sustainable Standards Committee board. So that's also in happening currently in this ESG reporting landscape. So we have a few questions with the audience just to understand. Rochelle would be putting out the polls in terms of, are you reporting on ESG? So, okay, we have a mixed audience. It's almost balanced at 50-50. That's good to know. And if you, for those reporting, which frameworks do you use? So we have most of the audience reporting on GRI, and that's a good starting point, and we'll be looking at that framework in the slides that come up. So where would you say you are in the ESG journey? Would you say you are a beginner where you've just heard about ESG but not implemented it, or one step ahead where you are measuring it and reporting it? So feel free to drop a 0 and or 1 on the chat box so we can see where our audience stands before we go into the next activity that we have for you. So we have one beginner. Okay. So great. Okay, we see that we have quite a few beginners in this workshop today. So if you are a beginner, we start at level 1. Introducing to you Niall. So Niall works at a software company in Sri Lanka, which makes bespoke platforms for customer needs. He's the finance lead and just tracks timesheets, and he's very confused because he's been asked to introduce ESG to the firm, and he has no idea where to start. So if you were Neil at this point, where do you think you would start? Feel free to share your answers in the chat box. We'll give it 30 seconds. We're trying to make this interactive, so please feel free to speak out your mind. There are no wrong answers here. Are we too clueless to know what to do next? Okay. So Hi,
Okay.
Okay.
So Shazad
So
will
Shazad will now show you
Nile
if he was Nile at this point, what he would have done.
Thanks, Manish. So I saw in the chat box that there are several people who are like starting off who don't know much about how to report on the GRI standards or to identify certain KPIs, right? So if I was Nile, or in most of the situations that we have seen in our client portfolio, we have seen that there are people who or clients who collect information, but they don't know what to do with it. So we get SME organizations as well as large scale organizations who collect a lot of information, but they are unable to report it for many reasons. So if I just start at, if I were a beginner, what I would do is first identify what kind of information is collected. I would see what information is collected and what can be reported. Based on the information that I collect, I will also try to look at, okay, how can I make sense of those information through KPIs? I will always looking at the most basic KPIs, which I will show you in the next few slides, to see what kind of information can be reported. So once we identify the KPIs that we think can be reported, we need to report them to see, to identify what kind of impact we have made or what kind of impact we can make. For example, if we do the reporting on a quarterly or monthly basis, we will be able to assess the impact to see, have we progressed or are we falling back in terms of our measures. So it's very important to see what kind of areas we can report and what kind of information we have already to report so that we can take it to the next level. So if we move to the next slide. So when we take the reporting measures or the KPIs, it's important to identify basic information. For example, when you take, if it's a decent organization which records information on an Excel sheet or even an accounting system, certain information from divisions will get recorded for each division. For example, if you take the finance division, at a basic level, you will record your electricity expense. You will record your water bill, and you will also record your fuel expenses as well. So what you can do as an organization is first take the first step to see, okay, identify what information is recorded. Once you identify what information is available, then you can see, okay, in terms of progress, what you can do. For example, if I take the example of electricity, what will happen is you will take those information, record it, and then you will see, okay, this month I have an electricity number of units of, we say 600 units. But then again, can we save some electricity by doing certain initiatives? So the important point here is to identify what kind of information or what kind of data is available and see how you can enhance it. When it comes to electricity, you can see whether you all are using, whether you can go into more energy efficient bulbs, whether you all can go into a different solution like solar, whether you can go into a different UPS or any power saving devices and see whether you can save it. So once you do that, then the next quarter or the next month or the next year, you can say, okay, this is how much of carbon emissions I have saved. So similarly, when you take water or fuel, once you start recording it and then measuring and monitoring it, you should be able to improve all these information and these KPIs to make it look better as well. And then when you take human resource department, they will always take down the number of employees. They will also record the turnover. They will they'll be looking at the training, and then they will be looking at how diverse your employee force is. So these are very basic information which any organization will record on a basic level, but sometimes fail to look into the measurements. So it's important that any organization that you're in, as a starting point, to see what information is readily available, then start identifying it, measuring it, and then monitoring it to see how it can be improved. These are very basic KPIs that I have put on screen. What we will show in the next few slides is that the future or the next level KPIs will also be presented in this presentation that we are doing. Apart from that, there are some other KPIs that I want to show. So apart from the basic ones, you have other procurement related, supply related areas where you can look into your suppliers, whether they are going green, whether they are supporting what your vision is. And then you can also look at your customers and see what their privacy levels are and how much of effort you have taken into to measure them as well. And then some other simple things is recycled material being used by the organization and how much of recycle activity is happening within the organization. The simple thing is, once you start measuring it, you will start monitoring it, and after that you will start improving as well. So it's very important to start somewhere, not thinking too much of any complications which any standard will offer. And then we have to measure these KPIs, you will have to also identify what is key for you. You need to prioritize what to measure and monitor and how to do it. So it's important to use these simple tools like stakeholder engagement as well as materiality assessments. So these are coming stemming from GRI, and then you will put it into annual reporting as well. So I will just take you through engagement stakeholders to see how it's defined and how it's monitored as well. So this is just a tool that we use for engaging stakeholders. So if you say stakeholders for an organization is any person who is interested in an entity. It can be employees, it can be suppliers, it can be customers, it can be the society around the organization as well. So what we need to know and what we need to identify is who is our correct stakeholder. First, we need to identify who is our key stakeholders. And then we need to start engaging with them to see, okay, what is the impact that we are making. And once we do that, we need to start measuring it so that we can make progress in the future in quarterly or even annually to see what additional measures can be taken to improve these specific indicators. So I'll just show you some sample stakeholders, right? So when you take stakeholders, these are like very common stakeholders that we use. So employees, customers, shareholders, and suppliers. So when you take employees, it's important when it's specifically in the tech industry to take care of your employees, because if it's a service sector, employees will be a key resource. So it's important during COVID times to look at their health and safety. And then we also need to always train them, improve them, because in many organizations, what we have seen is if you don't train them or if you don't take them to the next level, they'll be quickly demotivated, because it's usually a performance-based culture which is created. So how do you do this? You need to communicate this through doing some surveys, identifying do you do your performance appraisals to see whether your employees are happy. Based on this, they will report back to you, and then based on those indicators, you can see, okay, what are the next steps which we can take to improve these indicators. Similarly, when it comes to customers, there is a very sensitive relationship when it comes to the service sector. So you need to do customer satisfaction surveys, and then you need to see what other innovations have been launched, and then you need to take these measures or communicate with these through specific surveys and customer rating models to see what kind of input the customers are giving. So based on these indicators, you can say, okay, next level, what am I going to do? How am I going to improve this? Similarly, when it comes to shareholders used to look at return maybe 10 years back, but now a lot of shareholders are looking at different interests, how they deal with their suppliers, how you deal with your customers, and how the ESG framework is applied into your company. So it's not only returns these days, but there are shareholders who are looking into different aspects of an organization. So this, how you communicate is through your annual report, and then additionally by getting certain certification as well as assurance to give more confidence to the shareholders. So suppliers and society is also like a key stakeholder. Nowadays, we have seen like suppliers being looked into, and when you're doing an organization supply evaluation, you also check how ethical practices are applied by this supplier. For example, when it comes to multinational companies, they see whether child labor is applied, whether there is a proper minimum wage being provided, things like that before they enter into a supplier with any country or any organization. So it's important that we look at all these aspects when we look at our stakeholder engagement. This will take us to the next level. So this is basically, Kalisha will just take us through some of these aspects. Kalish?
Shazad explained about stakeholders, and you're thinking, oh, okay, now I know who my stakeholders are, I know what matters to them, but how do I see impact? Like, how do you know how are they impacting my organization? Is it actual? Is it potential? Like, how do you determine that? So impact actually goes in 3 aspects that you can look at it. One is, does your activity cause the impact? If you are doing business in creating softwares, does creation of that software create an impact? For example, you'd be using an office space, and then you would be using electricity, and then you're using electricity, so then you're putting energy out there. So that's you directly causing impact. Or would you be contributing to an impact? For example, you doing an activity and then giving that product to a supplier who then uses it for something. The way they use it, do you contribute in some way to some negative or positive impact that way? Or is it directly linked because of your business relationships? So directly linked would be not only by contracts, like let's say your relationships with the suppliers, it's everything. It's your relationship with the customers, your relationship with suppliers. So we have a small exercise for you to help you figure out if these are actually impacts in terms of causes, contributes, or directly linked to. So you can answer in the chat box. So if an organization uses cobalt in its products that it's mined using child labor, would that be the organization causing the impact? Would that be the organization contributing to the impact? Or would that be the organization directly linked to the impact? Hello? So there are a few examples on the screen. The first one is if the organization uses cobalt in its products that is mined using child labor. Do you think that would be a direct cause that the organization's activity is creating, or is the activity contributing? Would this activity contribute to an impact, or would it be directly linked to an impact? Yes, it's directly linked to impact. So if the organization uses cobalt in its products that is mined using child labor, that is directly linked to the impact. Because you use the supply, but the supplier who supplies you the product is using child labor, so it's directly linked. Let's say pays a bribe to a foreign public official, what would that be? Is the organization causing the impact? Is the organization contributing to an impact, or is the organization directly linked to the impact?
if we can get more answers, that will be great, so that we can actually help you guys as well to understand it better.
Okay, so when you pay a bribe to a foreign official, you're causing an impact because you are doing it knowingly. So that would be causing the impact. Yeah. The next one is if the organization sets a short lead time for a supplier to deliver a product, despite knowing from experience that this production time is not feasible. What do you think this would be? Yeah, I can repeat the question. So if the organization sets a short lead time for a supplier to deliver a product, despite knowing from experience that this production time is not feasible. So I know that you can't do it in this time frame, but I give you this time frame anyway. And what is the organization doing by this activity? Are they causing the impact, contributing to an impact, or directly linked to an impact? Okay. So in this instance, it's not actually causing the impact. This is a bit of a tough one because it's contributing to, because the organization is, its own activity is not doing it, but I am telling my supplier to do it. So my supplier can, let's say, add more people to the job to make it happen. But instead, if I keep the same amount of people and try to make them work longer hours, then I would be doing forced labor and not ensure, and employee well-being would be low. So in this instance, it's basically the organization's activity, because you're setting this deadline, is contributing to the supplier to do something, to have a negative impact on the supplier stakeholder. So they're basically creating an impact by contributing to it. The next one is withdraws water from a water-stressed aquifer without replenishing it. What would that be? Would this activity cause the impact, contribute to an impact, or is it directly linked to the impact? So if the organization takes water out and does not replace it, uses water in its, let's say, productions. Yeah. Yasuri has got it right. It's causing, because they're literally taking it for their activities, and they have not replenished the usage that they have taken. So just to clarify, if you are causing it, your activities directly cause the impact. So let's say if I do my activity, for example, if I'm making if I'm creating like softwares and I'm using a room, then I'm using electricity, I'm using water. So whatever I do to those aspects would be causing the impact, because my operational activities directly causes those impacts. But if I was contributing to it, it would mean that from my activities, because of the conditions that I set for my activities, other conditions outside my control would be forced to do things, and that would be contributing to it. And directly linked is based on my relationships and the final products that I send out to customers, how it affects, or my suppliers giving me things, how that affects. I hope that's clear. Okay. So now that we've gone through impacts and you know, okay, who are my stakeholders? I have employees, I have suppliers, I have customers, and you're thinking of all your stakeholders, and now you know how your impacts work. So now you need to see, okay, how much influence does my stakeholder have on my business, and how much of an impact do they have? Why do you have to do this? Because you have a lot of stakeholders who have a lot of requirements, and all of that, if you try to like please everybody, you're not going to be able to focus on your business and do what you want to do and why you started your business for. Because you obviously started your business with a passion, or to create a product or service in the field that you think you needed to do it for. So you can't please everyone in this space, but you need to figure out who you want to focus, and who are going to be your main interests, and how much of an impact they have. Because some people would have huge impact on your business, but you can not influence them in any way. For example, the government, like Pumi mentioned, saying that if they put like overnight bans on things, then you have zero influence over their actions, but they have high impact on certain operations that you would have. So you need to figure out it. We use this tool called materiality to identify, based on influence and impact, who do we want to prioritize, why do we want to prioritize them, and how are we going to keep our stakeholders engaged with our business and connected with us in that sense. So as an activity, what do you think, the KPIs for a software company would be? Just, you can drop them on the chat box. I will tell the answer at the end, so no worries. So if you were a software company, because Neil is in a software company and he's thinking, okay, now I know my stakeholders, their employees, suppliers, my shareholders. So what KPIs should I be concentrating on? What should I be reporting to them to keep them engaged in my business? Any ideas? Okay, so I will give you guys a few heads up. So it can be in terms of data privacy, maybe data breaches. Yeah, that works too. So and then your securities, your fines, if you've got fined for anything, non-compliances, and then also in terms of employee diversity, employee hours, working hours, employee retention, overall well-being and training for employees, development of the employees, how much water usage you're using, because if you're a software company, you would need coolers, and coolers take a lot of water. So there's also alternative uses for the water. So you could probably use gray water instead of using fresh water. For example, Google uses seawater, and you've got Microsoft that does cooling by, they basically locate in cooler regions and then do not use air conditioning until the temperature reaches a certain level. Once it reaches that level, the air cons automatically turn on. So different KPIs come in different ways. So those are a few examples for you. So moving on. Now, obviously, you've got a lot of information and you know who your stakeholders are, you know what's material, you know the impacts that they make. So you're thinking, is there any way that I can like start this with using a framework that might make my life easier, so that, you know, I don't have to reference back to something or just keep researching? So yes, you can. There are standards that have made it easier by reporting on KPIs. One of them is GRI. So GRI has very specific standards for three main aspects. They go around economic, environmental, and social. So let's say you figured out that, okay, my main KPIs are going to be like electricity, water, energy. I want to like do better in those areas. So once you've decided that you want to do better, then you can go into GRI and take out the environmental section, and you can see that they'll have specific KPIs standards. For example, if you go into 302, that's your energy standard, you would have how to measure your electricity, how to calculate energy intensity. So all of that would be there in the standard, and it's quite easily explained as well, but you could always reach out to us for clarifications on this as well. And there is ways you can reference when you start. You can easily reference it, and then if you actually want to go into reporting on GRI, you can go with two options, core or comprehensive. Core is where you would only be reporting on selected standards, not all of it. And comprehensive is where you would report on every standard in GRI. So that means even if you don't have information regarding a certain standard, you would have to either say, I don't have the information and we're planning on putting it in later, or you would have to say, the standard is not applicable to our industry because of this. So GRI looks at economic, environmental, and social impacts for all stakeholders with a broad range of stakeholders. But you've got SASB, which is industry-specific standards. So they have 77 industry-specific standards, which they created based on a universe of sustainable issues, which goes around leadership and governance, social capital, human capital, business model and innovation, and environment. But SASB only looks at material financial impact of those KPIs to your organization, specifically to investors and providers of capital. So for the tech sector, they've got a standard which has subcategories, which goes as electronic manufacturing services and original design manufacturing, hardware, then internet media and services, semiconductors, software and IT services, and telecommunication services. So all of this would have separate specific KPIs that you can use. And the KPIs would look something like this, where you have the topic as to what areas it would cover, the accounting metrics that you could use, and the category, which would be quantitative or discussion and analysis. So if you're going to say quantitative, you could measure it. They'll give you like ways to measure it in detail. Or it would be discussion and analysis, where you could just talk about, let's say, I have this plan for this KPI. So that's how SASB has targeted to or helps out the tech sector to report on specific KPIs. So if you can look at the KPIs there, they've got monetary losses due to legal proceedings associated with user privacy, list of countries where co-products or services are subject to government required monitoring, blocking, content filtering or censoring. So all of this is just to show your investors and providers of financial capital the impact ESG is having on financial aspects of your business. So that's about it. Do you think Niall can go back and start on his ESG journey, or introduce ESG to his firm? You could put a thumbs up reaction in the chat box if you think yes. If you think no, maybe you could like drop in all your questions in the chat box and we can see how to answer those. Okay, I see a few yeses coming up, so I'm guessing he can go back and figure it out. So just to wrap up of Niall's case studies, Niall just had to introduce ESG to his firm. So we taught about who your stakeholders are, start with self-assessment, where you identify what you currently have and the impacts that you're making. And how do you do that is by identifying who your stakeholders are, what's material to your stakeholders, and then reporting on that. Pumi and Shazad, do you want to add anything?
No, I think we can move on unless we've got specific questions at this point, and encourage the participants to be a little bit more interactive and use this forum for
I
any
think now
clarifications.
we can look at Niall's next journey and see how he's going into level it up.
Okay, so now that we're done with level 1, it's moving on to level 2. Can we get the polls running? Rochelle? So I see we have sorry. We have more people raising awareness and a few in progress. That's good to know. Can we get the next poll running about how your organization is looking at ESG? What's their attitude towards ESG? Okay, that's good to know. So we've got very inquisitive and opportunistic people in this chat, a few who are overwhelmed. Let's try to make it easier for you guys. No one's skeptical, so that's good to know. Nice. Okay. Pumi, do you want to take over? I will explain the case. So now we have Jen. She is, so she is the sustainability lead at her firm, SciTech, and they do original design manufacturing. They report KPIs based on GRI, and especially I've noticed based on the first poll, most of you report on GRI. So she's read about a lot of things happening in the ESG space, and she's really curious. And then she calls you to ask you, so what would you do at this point? Any suggestions? Drop it in the chat box.
Yeah, I think we'll help Jen through her leveling up journey now. Kalesh, let's move to the next slide so we can get everybody focused on the level up journey. Great. So see, we're trying.
Pumi would explain to you. Hi, sorry.
Okay, great. So we've got somebody who is saying, because I'm at level 1, we will need assistance to level up. I would work with a consultant to help us through. Okay. Yeah, consultants are more than happy to help you. So maybe we can share a bit of information on leveling up as well. See, a lot of organizations start this journey because it becomes a compliance issue. Like even for tech, at this point, it might even be a compliance issue because your customers are asking you to be more ESG friendly, or maybe it's just a requirement because your investors are looking at ESG. So that's a good way to start. But over time, you would realize, and this is what businesses are realizing at this point, is that you will integrate into your core processes as the next level, and then you will think about a more strategic direction. Now, let me give you some examples so that this is brought into perspective as opposed to just theory. If you were to look at the longer term journey, let's start from it being a strategic integration. And your business is to be more sustainable while natural resources are going to be extinct. We run out of metal, for example. So how do we address that? How do we still stay in business? Because see, it's come to a point where doing what is right is also doing what is profitable at this point. Think about it. In the tech industry, if you run out of metal, you're going to have a lot of hardware issues. So maybe a good way to start thinking about it is through circularity. What is circularity? It is about closing the loop. You have a loop and you try and close it. You reuse material within your own supply chain, for example. That's just one aspect. So a good example that we were discussing this afternoon to share with you is the example of Intel, where they are separating out the different metals in their hardware and the chips, say from gold to silver to metal. You would know better than me in this case. And they're recycling it and reusing it to a greater extent. I don't think they've achieved 100%, but they're starting that journey. So that's one aspect of things. The second aspect, a step before that, is also to understand that if you think of ESG as something that you have to just tick the box in, suddenly you're looking at it from a cost perspective, because you have to spend more to keep those initiatives alive. But if it becomes a part of yours and your discussions about reinvesting or what to spend your money on is more focused on sustainable measures, and your investments are taken considering those aspects, you over time would become a business that is integrated into ESG without even knowing it. And you might even see opportunities. You might be sitting on a carbon sink, for example. Or you might realize as a smaller tech company that you are more sustainable than the others. Therefore, you have a competitive advantage in the market. You just need to use that and publicize it, or use it to brand yourself or rebrand yourself at this point, and then build on it. And there is this perception when you say integrating into core business processes that can only be done by larger entities. That is, I think, a myth, because if you're smaller, you're more agile, and that way you could integrate it into your business processes more. Now, let me give you an example in the financial services industry and how this really impacted them in a positive way during the pandemic. We were working with this organization, I think, for the past 16 years as they evolved, changed names, changed investors. We were part of their sustainability journey. And I remember the turning point when we had a CFO who was more passionate about this topic. And he took it upon himself to actually very boldly speak to the board and say, no, I think ESG is going to give us returns in the longer term. So I think it's time that we integrated it into our business plans. And it was a painful process, but they did it. They integrated a few things. Over the years, with a more progressive CEO by his side, they digitalized a lot of their operations, which was, I would say, more efficient for them cost-wise. And it was also, in a way, for their business, more energy efficient. I would say, from a fuel perspective, from electricity perspective, from the branch network perspective, use of land, all of that. So that paid off once the pandemic hit. And for the last 2 years, I think they've grown as opposed to their competitors who have been struggling to keep things together. They've survived, but they haven't grown. So similarly, there are other financial services sector individuals who are not even in tech, who thought about these things and used tech to better their businesses. So when you're in tech, and tech being a solution for the world's bigger problems, especially with green tech, I think we've got the masterminds who sit in these organizations like yourselves, who might be able to revolutionize this. So if you're leveling up, it's time to start changing your mindset from just being, oh, this is just something that we have to do to, make ourselves look good, or to make ourselves more appealing to an investor or a customer, but really start to think about the longer term game. And if you, as individuals who are part of this workshop today, are more than are interested in going up and speaking up in your relevant organizations, that itself is a voice that will help your organizations in the future. Yes, what is a carbon sink? So in essence, it's something that you are a net positive almost. So you could see there's a lot of discussion about net carbon and carbon zero and all of that, where most of us are spending so much that there is carbon emission into the world. But if you can absorb it, and you're in a situation where you have the opportunity to absorb it back in, and you're a net positive, that is essentially in a way of sinking the carbon, in that sense. That's the way I used it in that particular example. So your strategic thinking will change from just CSR to risks, where you're worried, like climate change is going to hit me, or I'm going to become irrelevant, or natural resources are going to run out, or the investors are going to not look at us because we were late to the game, but also integrating it into our businesses so that there's real overall value enhancement. So that's leveling up. That's one way to think about it. And I think that's the way that each of you should take your messages back. So we've just summarized it here. Kalish, next slide, please. So if you think about the strategy in your organizations, how would you say you guys are compared to your peers? I mean, you can answer for yourself in the chat box. In terms of strategy, are you think you're at compliance? Are you integrating it into the business? Or are you really, really leveling up to looking at strategic direction? So this is more a question for those of who are in this journey already. I think we have a few participants who are in this journey already. Can we answer in the chat box, please? So while you're answering that, maybe you could also answer to see if your products that you offer are ready from an ESG perspective. Do you think you as an organization, or the organization that you're part of, is addressing all the expectations of those stakeholders who are stakeholders of your business? So these three questions, if you can answer. So we're going from compliance to integrating into business. Okay, that's great. Are your products ready? Do you think you're addressing stakeholder expectations? Excuse me. Can we get more answers so that we have some perspective, and then we can spend more time on relevant sections? Okay, so let's just move on while the others are thinking about it. So, see, another part of this whole leveling up journey, other than, looking at strategic direction, is you need to ask yourself, and this is why we ask these questions, is have you got established policies and practices within your organization? Do you have a governance structure for ESG, or is it integrated part of your business model? Do you have specific champions in each of your divisions? These are questions to ask. Now, another thing that I always very passionately speak about is, how is your board looking at it? Because if those charged with governance are not really looking at it, there's no point us speaking about it. So like I gave you the example of the CFO, what he did was he took his as is, and then he suggested, and he showed up, and he had this discussion with the board, and he made them see the opportunity that they were missing out. So you need to have a board pack and have that data collected, that information collected from each of those divisions periodically. Have initiatives to improve on those KPIs initially, and then keep showing these numbers to the board. And with it, showcase the opportunities. I mean, Kalisha went through the material aspect. So you could choose those as a starting point and build on it. Now, to ease this, we have systems. I mean, there are different various systems that you could put in place. Like you have a GL, you could integrate it into that, because this is just non-financial aspects. But the challenge is going to be collecting the data. So you'll have to train some of those divisions to do this for you more effectively, and also use tools. So we also have ESG IQ, which is a tool that you could use, and that's more a rating as well as an information decision making output producing tool. So similarly, you have other tools in the market that you could use as well. So Dania says they have, and the board is on board with taking ESG holistically, with reporting the board on a monthly basis. So if you are at that point already, Dania, and for those of whom who are at that point, the next step is to talk about improving those practices and integrating it into the business and looking at it at a more strategic perspective. So how are we going to do that? Those are conversations you need to start having at the board. Now, that would be a whole different segment of learning that we could focus on. But if you would like further information, we're more than happy to have that conversation with you, Dani, if you need help. Right. Kalish.
Yeah. Thank you, Pumi. So now Pumi explained about your whole strategy and how you would put that. So to make it easier, there are frameworks that help you look at strategy. So you've got the integrated reporting framework that covers your entire business model and then tells you in terms of 6 capitals and how you would create value in terms of those 6 capitals. So each capital could be linked directly to a stakeholder. So you've got your financial capital, manufactured capital, intellectual, human, social and relationship, and natural. So whatever of aspects of this capital that goes in as inputs into your business and comes out as outputs, you need to see how it is integrated throughout your business rather than looking at it as individual aspects. Currently, most organizations, if they were not thinking integrated, they would be doing it like, okay, HR would just manage HR functions and not see how HR could impact operations and then how that would impact your manufactured capital or your financial capital. So in that sense, the integrated reporting gives you a business model and a framework that you can think. So for governance, you could think of areas like, okay, what's my strategy going to be like? What is my resource allocation? What are the risks and opportunities that I need to consider? What's my outlook like? So Shazad will also tell you about a few things in terms of the future trends towards the end of this, which you can use. And the outcomes, basically, what impacts are you making? And then how can you put those impacts back into your business and create value over time. So that is in terms of the IR framework. There is also TCFD. This was initially created for financial institutions so that investors could have comparability over the KPIs that were reported. So as you saw in the landscape, there are a lot of standards out there: GRI, SASB, IR, CDP. So there's a lot, and to find uniformity, it's really difficult. Hence, for the financial sector, TCFD came out, which looks at only climate-related disclosures and how to report on those. But organizations are adopting this because of the detail that it goes into in terms of how, with all their scenario analysis, saying, okay, this scenario would cause this financial impact. So if you look, Nestle would be reporting on it, and BlackRock is reporting on it. A lot of firms are actually taking up TCFD as well. And KPMG also does assurance on TCFD. We've put out the first assurance report in Australia. And Pumi, do you want to add anything to this?
Yeah, sure. So actually TCFD is your
Yeah.
quantification. Can you hear me? Yeah. So TCFD is actually a quantification. There's a lot of scenario analysis in it. The reason that it's a good measure is because of the quantification, because a lot of people want to know how is it going to impact my business financially. So like doing an expected loss calculation for credit, you would do the same for climate. But it's also an overall framework which will go from governance to targets as well. This is fairly new. We've had inquiries from various companies who are willing to go through these disclosures. And why are they going to go through it? It's naturally because they have connections in the EU or in the UK. That's the first reason that they would do it. Second reason you would do it is if you want to be more proactive, or as an organization if you want to do it. So it can be a little bit challenging, but not that much. But that's the importance of it. So you might think, oh, why do I have to do all these different frameworks? Right now, everybody's working on a consolidated framework. Till that, different bodies would be asking for different versions of ESG matrices. Just to add that there.
So these were in terms of frameworks, but you also have common goals that the world is working towards, the UN SDGs, for a better and more sustainable world. Tech companies mainly focus on SDG 8, SDG 9, which is good jobs and economic growth, innovation and infrastructure, partnership for the goals, quality education. So Google focuses on that. Gender equality because of the diversity in the sector, and clean water and sanitation. You could read up more on these goals, or you could reach out to us for clarification on any specific goals. A lot of Sri Lankan corporates are also looking into this, and we have a lot of clients who are committing to this goal. So these goals are not only for corporates, but also for countries and individuals alike. Now Shazad would take you through Jen's next question on how to build confidence.
Thanks, Garish. So like you all know, like to make things more reliable and more to build more confidence with any stakeholder, it's always important to go with additional assurances as well as certifications. So just moving on to the next slide, I will just show you some of the certifications which are available and which most of the tech companies as well as the leading corporates have taken in. So like you all know, I think ISO is one of the most common certifications that they get in terms of quality, energy efficient, and then looking at employee safety, health and safety. ISO certifications are really readily available. So the important thing with certifications is to cover the ESG aspect, it helps cover certain elements of the E, S, and G component, actually, mainly the E and S component of it. Then we have Energy Star certifications, which which provide additional support to say that the product which is being used is extra energy efficient, and it's a type of an assurance that you can get in terms of products. And then we also have the Rainforest Alliance certification, LEED, B Corp, Fitwel certification. These all are these certifications which will give you additional support to your stakeholders to say that proper measures have been taken in terms of quality as well as supporting the environment. So if you take a Rainforest Alliance certification, it's more towards how sustainably food or any other products are being sourced in. So similar to that, we also have GSG carbon emission certification, which most of the Sri Lankan top leading firms are taking in, because that helps them to get the net carbon or net zero carbon emission test done. So most of the annual reports which report in Sri Lanka have taken these carbon neutral certification, mainly in the manufacturing sector. So these are some of the areas that you can watch out for. And the next area that I want to just show you is the assurance part of things. So like Kalisha said, we have the GRI assurance, which most of our participants as well as most of our clients, which we deal with, report on. So on the GRI, first step is to identify what KPIs, what information that you are currently having, and then you take them up as measures, and then you report on it. There are organizations which report on KPIs without obtaining any assurances, which the next level of that is to go into your GRI assurance. So as KPMG, we look at financial information, we give a reasonable assurance, as well as non-financial information, which covers all the capitals, the 6 capitals of the GRI framework, where we give a limited assurance on it. So similarly, when it comes to GRI, is like the second step of an organization getting assurance, and then we have a more advanced assurance which we give on the IR framework as well. That is also what Kalisha mentioned, is that on the IR content element, we look at it and we give a limited assurance. So all these assurance services will add value to your reporting to give more confidence to the stakeholders. It can be investors, it can be suppliers, it can be anybody. Because we have seen, based on these assurances, there are other multinational companies which rely on these areas, and then it might turn into a new business opportunity for the clients. Okay, so then we have the next level of KPIs, which I just want to sum up to you as well. So apart from the very general basic KPIs on water and then electricity, which you can report on, when we take, since this is a tech forum, I just want to take up Intel, SAP, and Oracle. So when you take Intel's annual report, they mainly focus on manufacturing chipsets. So they focus on reporting on their carbon emissions, how they have reduced it, and what are the additional steps taken. And when it comes to renewable energy, they try to go as much as renewable energy as possible. And like Pumi mentioned, when it comes to carbon usage as well as water usage, there is net zero carbon, as well as some companies have taken additional initiatives to make it positive, net positive. For example, Intel is using their resources to add value to the water usage as well through different initiatives that they have taken in the environmental aspect. And zero total waste landfill is tried to, because they have plastic waste which is available, they use it for landfills as well. So in terms of Intel's landscape, they have made additional effort to make sure that the environment is protected to a higher level. And when it comes to SAP, it's a more of a service based organization, So their main focus will be on the customers as well as the employees. So they will always look at, okay, how did we serve the customer better? How can we make it more reliable, and what are the efforts that we take to make it more reliable? So they are putting customer net promoter scores as KPIs, and then may make sure that each year that the improvements are going in. And since it's an employee-based company, it's always important to keep the employees motivated. So they have taken additional steps to make employment more attractive at SAP, as well as to contribute to the economy through that. So they are focusing on the social aspect as well. Apart from these two main areas, they are also working on carbon impacts so that they can reduce the greenhouse emissions. So these are done through greenhouse certification, which they assess on an annual basis and report on their financial statements. And next is mainly Oracle. So Oracle is again service-based organization, which is also looking at how to make it more energy efficient, because as you know, most of the tech companies, they use a lot of energy in terms of servers and other compute equipment. So what they always try to focus is to make it as renewable energy as possible, because there are certain plants which are which use zero electricity. They are mainly based on solar electricity. So there is no additional burden to the economy or the social ecosystem. Again, an additional measures which any organization can take is looking into their suppliers, getting their suppliers also to be green. So you once you get to a certain level, you can always bargain or negotiate with suppliers to be more greener, and then that will be also like Kalisha mentioned, indirect or direct, basically indirect impact can come into your organization. So it's important to highlight these areas in your financial statements so that you can always say to what extent you have gone in, and then getting the assurance to show that you have worked towards it and there is some credibility in the information that you report on. So these are some of the next level KPIs that I just want to showcase so that you get a better understanding on it. All right, I think we have loaded you all with a lot of information. If you guys have any questions, definitely shoot it to us. We can help you out. I just have two more areas just want to highlight on. Kalisha, if you can just, yeah. So in terms of KPMG's landscape, I think we are also working with, we are like champion team for KPMG Impact. So we have certain initiatives globally which are handled, and we are also supporting those. So in terms of the social aspect, technological, and then economic market and political regulatory market, we are also looking into certain areas which we will share the link with as well. So these are like certain initiatives that KPMG as a firm has taken steps so that the economy or there'll be sustainable development. And the final one which I want to touch upon was the COP26. So as you may know, like a month back, there's the COP26 took place. And there are so many new innovations which are focusing to improve the social ecosystem. So some of the new products that or innovations which came up is they had come up with CO2 consuming concrete technology so that they can reduce the CO2 emissions. And they are also working on data centers so that there are vibrational cooling systems which are there. And like Kalisha also mentioned, Microsoft is moving into cold regions so that server rooms will consume less energy via AC, or yeah, basically AC. So they try to keep the temperature within that range. So these are some of the latest developments which organizations and as well as globally countries are taking initiatives to make the ecosystem much healthier and more sustainable for future generations. So with that, I think even KPMG as well as global firms are taking initiatives to make things better, as well as help firms increase their or improve their social responsibility as well as their governance aspect as well. So I think we have come to the end of the presentation. If you have any questions, please feel free. Myself, Kalisha, and Pumi, we are ready to answer any questions or any doubts that you have. You can unmute and speak as well. Is that correct, Rochelle?
Yes, they can unmute.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
First of all, thank you. I put that in the chat box as well. Maybe Friday is a bit slow for us all, and maybe that's why everyone is quiet. Maybe we had a big lunch or something. But I definitely have a lot of questions, but I think separately, as I think you mentioned, I maybe have a conversation with you all separately.
Sure, yes.
Just to understand from where we're at and the journey that we've planned out before, because we're going to start our business planning next year. I mean, in January, we've already kind of started this year, but from January, we'll be kind of putting it into the business plan into the different areas. So as a KPI actually into the business plan and stemming up from there. So I think I'll leave my questions, as I said, for maybe a one-to-one or a meeting with you separately, just on just sharing our journey and stuff.
So like, just to add on to that, like Pumi mentioned in one of the slides, when you're developing your journey, it's very important that you focus everything on your strategy as well as your vision, the corporate vision.
Correct.
Yeah, so once that is developed, you can set your KPIs, then you need to understand who your stakeholders are, and then you need to see who is material and then focus. So then you will have like a set plan in terms of annual and maybe a 5-year plan, which will take you there.
The standards and evaluating modeling is very similar to the ISO QMS, right? You start off with your vision, right? And, like you have a quality statement, you should have an ESG statement or a sustainability statement for the company as well, right? Where you can, create the SMART objectives from that as well. So just one general question. I've not read up about it, so this is me being ignorant on that. GRI, there are so many different frameworks, right?
Correct.
I've heard many, I've chatted to a few people on the different GRIs that they use, not just in Sri Lanka, but globally as well. We are a systems integrator, so just-in-time group where I am from, and two of my colleagues are here as well. We are a systems integrator, that's why we fall under ICT, so information communication technology, not just a software development. So we have definitely more ESG factors to consider, especially on the environmental impact. Because recently we just got into doing an audit for our carbon footprints, and an audit looking at where all those aspects, and we just finished our audit and we are in progress of getting carbon neutral status.
Okay, so, perfect.
Because of that, it really got me into really understanding, from a process point of view, how to integrate it, where you can improve, where we need to improve further. Some things that we're already doing, we've already started this. We had a green policy some time back, which I started as part of our CSR transformation process. But so it's just, as I said, we're still at the level 1 here, sometimes I feel like I'm at the level 2 at a certain point, then I come back to the first question, like when you get stumped from another scene, why do we need to do this? What is this all about? So I think the main challenge that I would say that I'm having right now is maybe making it understood at different levels of people. So, like say in the finance team, every department has, not about seniority level, sometimes they're interest, sometimes they're so bogged down with that work, but still they have to kind of feel it, understand the why or the purpose behind it. It's more than just a tick box, like you said, right? Otherwise it just becomes like compliance and then therefore it won't be embedded into the DNA, right? So that
Danya, actually, just to add to that, right? So we've worked with many corporates, and a very good example is during this COVID crisis, we've seen many companies that we worked with, because they were reporting on these initiatives from inception, they were able to be more resilient. I think Pumi can also add to this, because this is...
So,
that's a
Tanya,
fact
I
I need
mean,
to bring out, yes, to
it
showcase
is.
that.
And I think what you can do is, it's just about establishing, and we can talk about this. I think there's so many different ways we could do this. But one, I mean, just for the benefit of the rest of the audience, is yes, what Shazad said is one. Two is, if it becomes an objective of the organization and it gets embedded into the usual KPIs of the departments, the individuals, that's another way to do it. If you're not ready for that, maybe start with champions, you know. So it's all about how your organization is wired. So these are different, these are just three options. So we can talk about it, and we're happy to share our ideas with you as well. I'm glad you're in that journey now.
That's probably why I have so many questions. But just
That's
one
great.
last question is,
Sure.
My colleagues are smiling at me because I always have, maybe I'm in PR and corporate communication, so therefore I'm a bit more chattier than most.
No, you're welcome. I mean, we like chatty. Thank you.
My final question is, my purpose is, before the business planning, I want to present to the board and our senior management on the why and the purpose, right? So, and I know that like each member would want to see like numbers, like you shared the chart on the progress, right? It's like, it's only companies that are not doing well that can do ESG and have performed, you know, to counteract those arguments, you know.
Yeah.
How is this, you know, where basically, how is we are going to get the ROI, the return on investment, you know, just to break down those mindsets. So
yeah,
I want to do a presentation on, you know, covering all those factors to bring it out before I start, because then I feel, you know, when they're also on that journey together with you is much easier, the fluidity, right? There are going to be challenges, even if everyone's on board, there's going to be challenges, cost factors, whatever the factors, right? Budgetary factors and time factors that anyway going to kind of have small you know, pauses or delays. But apart from that, the mindset is the biggest challenge, right? To change that mindset. And
that's going to take a while. I'm going to be brutally honest.
No, yes, of course I know. That's like digital transformation, right? Anything, but I'm saying they're already on board. So that's not the question. It's just looking at the cost factor. Then suddenly when I put numbers and you need to spend on this, and then it's like, hey, how come it's costing this much, you know? So, but I understand where it's coming from, especially now we are looking at more, you know, more survival, right? Like, as you said, because we haven't had these in place, maybe, you know, we are looking at more survival in this next 2 years rather than, you know, progress in certain factors because of COVID.
So I think it's a case by case basis to sort of, it depends on what is in your strategic objectives at this point. And if you can find something that's linked to it, and that's how most of these change makers in organizations convince boards. Yes, there's a cost factor, but sometimes if you can convince them of that long-term benefit, and I'm sure you have a compelling case and you'll probably be able to articulate it well. That's if you just get one thing through the door, I think you're good to go. Then it just becomes a natural thing. They don't question it every time. Then it just becomes part of the blood. You don't have to name it ESG after that. You just need to get one initiative through the door, and a good one.
So basically, you're saying, for example, we have the risk dashboard. Like, look at some of the risks and how you can link that to the ESG and how the ESG can help mitigate that risk and make it into an opportunity. Correct?
Yeah, I mean, if risk is something that's discussed at the board and they take it seriously, go down that path. Some organizations don't do that, unfortunately. So then it's a different way. It's more about customer engagement or branding, you know, that those are like more reputation. Those are the easier ones because that's what people are bothered about. So it'll depend, depending on the organization. We've seen different versions in different organizations. So yeah, that's a good way to go about it.
Okay, thank you both.
Thank you for engaging, Danya. I'm really happy. Thanks.
Thank you. It is interesting because I've, Rochelle and Slascom have just recently joined their team in working on the ESG journey for Slascom's initiative for Sri Lanka's becoming a green IT destination, right? So I'm a bit of greenhorn in this area anyway, especially but it's a passionate area of mine.
That's great. We need more of you.
And you have to ask the questions to understand, right? Even if it's repetitive. So maybe I'm glad there's lots of newbies here on this
Exactly.
session and
Yeah.
Thank you.
Great.
No problem.
Do we have any more questions? If we don't, maybe we can wrap up. I think it's left to Slascom to close up the session if required. And we're just happy to have had this audience and the questions. So feel free to contact any of us if you've got further questions.
Yes. Thank you very much, everybody. Hope it was an insightful session for everyone.
Yes, thank you. Have a good Friday. And
Thank you. Thank you everyone for joining. Have a pleasant day.
Everyone.